All right. Well, we are live. We are live. We are live. Thanks again for CCX Create allowing us to be here each and every Wednesday to bring you news that you can use. As you can see, I am sitting in the studio all alone. Brother Joe is out in the community, serving the community, taking care of some things. He may be able to join us um, via remote, via video, as we have a dynamic guest, today that's also joining us, via kind of satellite, if you will, all the way from Florida. We're going to get to her in just a second. It always feels a little different, right? When, your partner in crime is not here. He typically kind of hits you with those groundkeeping rules and that famous backpack. So I'm going to try my best to kind of mimic what he does, right? But again, we just want everybody to make sure that they're respecting, everyone's questions, and there is no wrong question, right? And just be nice, be polite. We're all here together, right? That famous backpack, making sure that you have the tools in that backpack for them, therefore you can make it to point A to point B without any real hassle. However, we do know that Minnesota is still, having individuals being, stopped, by law enforcement and, maybe federal agents and things of that nature. So please make sure that you're having those documents, to prove or show, that you are a U.S. citizen, things of that nature. Again, I'm sure that there's a lot of different services and resources that are out there, that will be able to kind of help you, through various processes. Things have all, has slowed down a lot, but, immigration is still here. Immigration's been around for a long time. Immigration will continue to be around. It's just all about kind of delivery, and it was kind of a shock, but, we're going to get through that. You know, Joe is not here, and so he always kinda gives me a little bit of grief, when I kinda mention the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Minnesota Vikings, and he's not here today. So, hey, Minnesota Timberwolves, they are in 4th place, in their division at 39 wins and 23 losses. They got about 20 games left, so I'm really excited, to see exactly, what they're going to do, down this home stretch, and to see if they're going to be able to perhaps creep up into that 3rd seed, and just kinda see what they do in the playoffs. They're 7-3, in the last 10 games, and it's just really, really excited to see, um, Ant-Man, kinda doing his thing, and, he's kinda surpassed, Kobe Bryant here recently, as far as 40-point games, in a season, at such a young age. I believe it was 25. So, again, kudos to him and the Minnesota Timberwolves, for what they're doing. The college basketball tournaments is underway. So all them young men and women are out there, doing their thing, representing their schools. So we'll see who kind of comes out on top, in that as well. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce, our guest speaker today, or our special guest today, Nayyirah Mohamed, right? Miss Mohammed, how are you today? As we as well, but I'm looking at that background and it looks awful warm there. Okay. Okay.
Right, let me know, get back in check. You don't know what cold is.
What's the temperature down there about right now?
It's about 80 degrees.
80 degrees. Wow. I think we were here at about 50 degrees here today. Um, Primarily cloudy. The
Oh,
wind was
wow.
blowing a little bit, so it felt a little cooler, than that 50 degrees if it made it to 50. But at this time of the year here in Minnesota, we will take that upper 40s to low 50s. I know that, moving forward here in the next few days, come this weekend, we're supposed to be even close to 60.
Oh, wow.
So for us, that's a victory.
That's a victory.
Absolutely. So if you would be so kind, before we break off into this conversation with Miss Nayyirah Mohammed, give us a little bit of background of kind of who you are, what you do, where you come from, and basically what you're doing today.
Oh, absolutely. So, my name is Sister Nayyirah Mohammed. I am a resident of the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm third generational resident here. And I'm the eldest of my mother's five children. She has six children, one deceased. So it's five of us. So I was raised in the family. My order is the eldest. So that automatically positioned me in life as a leader. So
Yep.
I've been married with my husband for 28 years. We have five young adult children and nine grandchildren.
Wow,
And
that's a big
so
family.
that's a big family. And yes, so I am the founder of the Repair of the Black Family. I show up in the world as, one that specializes in eradication of generational trauma. I'm also an author, three times bestseller author, and a speaker, TEDx speaker, trained by Les Brown. And dot dot dot. I would just say how I show up the most as your sister. I'm a sister. I like to show up as a sister that loves to struggle.
Right, right. And so tell us a little bit more about what this repair of the black family. Can you dive into that a little bit more for us?
Actually, yes. So I do believe that this is a divine given mission, and I gave birth to it, or it came through me at the loss of my dad. I lost my dad back in 2001. He transitioned. And when he transitioned, I'm a daddy's girl still to this day, y'all. And I fell in this deep, dark hole, like dark hole, right? And one of the things that I recall right before my dad passed, maybe like 2 days before he passed away, he said, baby, all of the men in my family could have made it. We could have did something better than what we did. But we allowed drugs and alcohol and jail and, these things to take us off the course of life. And I wanted to stop with me. Now, mind you, keep in mind he was in prison on his transition bed when he told me this.
Wow, okay.
So when he left and I went through my period of grief and depression, I was in that space for 10 years. And when I came out, or should I say came through that, which all I know now it was divine purpose, right? But when I came through that, one of the things that I know is now my mission is to help repair the family. And that's how that came about for me. It was through the pain and the grief and really the rebirth of a new direction for not just my family unit, but as many lives that God would allow me to impact to change the trajectory of how our families or even evolve our families to another state of existence.
Absolutely. If I may, share a little testimony myself as you being a daddy's girl, you
I'm a
know,
daddy's girl.
I am a mama's boy.
Okay.
And unfortunately, and I too, I am the oldest, but it's just my sister and I, and but I lost my mother when I was 18 years of age.
Mhm.
And I too, had an 6 year stretch, 8 year stretch of being in fog, and uncertainty and unclarity, and just not knowing exactly how the next day was going to be, and if I was kind of gonna make it to the next day. I was what you would call a gym rat back then. So
Mhm.
I was a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and younger, and I was feeling that I was invincible. So there's a lot of things that I went through, which could have definitely, landed me on the other side of that fence, right? Luckily, within that short 18 years that I, was blessed with my mother, physically, because she's never left. Uh,
Right.
she had set a solid foundation. She was a school teacher for like 8 or 9 years before she became a Minneapolis Housing Patrol Authority officer, which was hand in hand with the city Minneapolis Police Department, and so I had that foundation already set, from the age of 6 or 7 years of age, and I went through some periods, some definitely some trauma. I had my first child at the age of 15, three kids by the age of 21, and I was not on the right track, right? But again, with that foundation, I was able to kind of come through this cloud, and was able to kind of become a police officer, which, I served with Minneapolis and a couple other different agencies as, community service officers or police cadet or whatever the case may be. Did a little small stint with the state of Minnesota as a correctional officer. So I can, you know, I hear you and I feel you tremendously when you talk about this trauma, within our lives and within our communities, and how we need to rebuild and repair, the family, the Black family. So that is, I mean, I think we trying to hold church off up in here today or something.
What we
Yeah.
listen, you know, hey, I'm a principal woman, woman of God, woman of faith. And I know that now I do, in my mature state, that, God's will be God's will. And it's not about his will being done, but it's how we accept the will. And
Absolutely.
for me, that was the part that nobody could teach me. No, nobody could teach me how to accept it because I just didn't know how to do that. Right. I had a knowingness that it's his will, but how to accept it in my young age and, just not understanding the process of losing a parent, it was very hard for me to accept, and I believe that's what kept me stuck. You know, I can say one thing, but the feelings was totally different.
Right.
So to be able to, to go through that emotional intelligence, and gain the emotional intelligence with it has been a blessing for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I mean, I remember so clearly that I went to sleep like any other night, just in this fog, and again, not being clear, not being certain, things of that nature. And I woke up the next day, and it was just this divine light.
Mm.
Everything was just so clear, and it just seemed like I knew exactly what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. And I knew that these trials and tribulations were still going to be there. Those hurdles were still going to be there. And I had to kind of get over them or get through them in order for me to get where I needed to go you know and it was a struggle for a long time for me to be able to completely bury all of that negativity and things of that nature that was at the forefront for, like I said, almost 8 years. And it was quite interesting. But like I said, here you are, and here we are, and through a mutual friendship, we're sharing stories. Look at that.
Look at
uh,
that.
all the way
Yeah,
from Florida.
all the way from Florida.
You had sent me something in regards to yeah, Dianetics. Am I pronouncing that right?
Absolutely.
Dianetics.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me what is Dianetics, and how do we kind of, I mean, perhaps apply that, to our daily lives?
Absolutely. So, number one, I just want to give thanks to my particular leader, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, for introducing the Nation of Islam to the mental health technology of Dianetics, which is the modern science for mental health, right? It's the
Mhm.
alternative solution for mental health. And it was through this mental health technology, and notice what I'm saying, it's a technology that helped me to come out of that 10 years of grief, right? That 10 years of uncertainty, that 10 years of cloud of, showing up with the mask on in true emotional disturbance. to the point where physically I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia because of the suppressed, buried pain. And so Dianetics is a technology not only to help you to understand what you went through or what you're going through, but it's the why factor. Why? The single source to all of your nightmares, the single source to all of your heartache, your pain, your trauma. It's a single source to all of that. And through the study of the technology of Dianetics, I was able to learn what that single source is and actually get to the root cause of the pain, of different forms of pain, but just talking specifically about grief. And here we go. Watch this. Not just bury it, but eradicate it. So
Absolutely.
Dianetics helps one to, here we go. Watch this. Solve our own problems,
Mm.
right? It's a technology for the mind where, in our communities, and I'm all for therapy. This particular form of therapy doesn't evaluate or tell you what's wrong with you. The counselors help you to look and find and solve your own problems. And that's true empowerment. So if I had to give one word, my own description, what is Dianetics? It is empowerment for the mental health aspect of the person.
Absolutely. Well, when we talk about, mental health and other different factors that kind of plague, the black family primarily, it's very traumatic. It creates a lot of trauma, within the family. Um, and when I was coming up, we it seemed like the black family was not big on therapy. Whatever kind of happened in the house stayed in the house,
We
type of a deal. And
speak on it.
and even though that we have a lot of African American people um, with mental health, challenges today, there still seems to be a lack of therapy, a lack of programming. And I know that Brother Joe, if he was here, and he would probably kind of look at me crazy because I cannot remember at this point in time, but he is a co-founder, of a mental health rehabilitation center, and and I don't know why I can't remember it right now, and I feel so bad, but I'll remember. But anyway, we know that there's a lot of individuals that even when they kind of are seeking help, they have to end up going to the hospital or seeing that therapist, 3 or 4 or 5 times or more before the medication that they're receiving is set right. Sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's too low. People are on this waiting list for months before they can kind of get back in because of the long list, things of that nature. So, how, is one, to feel empowered, to kind of seek this therapy when they have all these different hurdles that they have to overcome?
Absolutely. Well, number one, let's just look at it for what it is. You said it, and I'm just going to speak a little bit more into it. It's a cultural shock in the Black community when we start to talk about our problems, right? Number one, we was conditioned, what goes on in the house stays in the house, don't tell my business. And, children are to be seen and not heard. And these are childhood things that we carry into adulthood. So when things show up in our lives, it's very hard to communicate. Sometimes we may want to do that, right? We may want to communicate, but we don't know how to communicate. And what I've come to find, as an individual, my personal self, two, life experience through my own family experiences, and three, as a coach, right? And, as a community advocate, a lot of people take medication because and this is my term here, that's the easy route out because it numbs the pain,
Hmm.
right? In order to really confront, face, and be willing to experience, talk about it, and really get it off your chest so that it can alleviate and disappear or dissipate, it takes us being able to look. And most times we come to find, I don't want to see that. I don't want to deal with it. And it's easier to bury it, pop a pill, and boom, that's gone. Right. So, what is necessary? What is required for us in this time? And this takes skill, this takes know how, right? Is for us to be able to get something in our homes where we're not dependent on medication. We're not dependent on somebody else solving our own problems. We need the skill, we need the ability to solve our own problems. And that's really teaching people how to communicate about what's happening with them. And the more we the more we're skilled at it, the more we can actually eradicate the trauma, because it's all about communication, which is the universal solvent. If I could just tell you, if I just had somebody watch this, just to listen to me, that would help to unburden me. Most people want to be heard and not told what to do and not told what's wrong with them. We need more people to listen to us. So, how do we confront it? Number one, we need to be, from my experience, we need to be trained on how to listen. And that's what I love about the technology in Dianetics. It don't have you talking to the person and telling the person what's wrong with them. It trains you on how to listen to a person and then guide that person to continue to solve what's happening with them via communication.
I have to say I love that word eradicate. I think I'm gonna have to start using that word a little bit more.
Yes, yes,
you know, I, I
yes.
I agree with you. When we're talking about listening and just talking and having conversation, is the key to a lot of things, right? Whether that's employment, relationships, etc. But we have this medical field that is so big on pushing medication because they're getting money and different kickbacks and things of that nature. And so when we go to the doctor, we kind of believe, in what the doctor's saying, right? We were trusting in this doctor to kind of get us better and make us better, and things of that nature. And we don't necessarily look into or read the fine print on the side effects or whatever the case may be, or even how much it costs, for this medication until it kind of starts, hitting that copay, or something like that there. I will say that at one point, I had high blood pressure. And my doctor was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna, give you some medication. I'm gonna give you some medication," you know, and I'm just like, "Yeah, I didn't really feel comfortable, but I also knew that I didn't want high blood pressure, you know." So I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was just like, "Man, I really think that you should try, you know, what he described as super beats." And so I end up trying these super beats, and I take a couple chewables, a day or whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden, with my working out and things of that nature, and obviously decent eating, my blood pressure, became under control without having to spend, hundreds of dollars or taking some type of medication that I didn't know what the side effects was going to be. So
Understood.
these physicians are pushing this medication, and a lot of folks are trusting and believing in these physicians, and then it impacts or has an impact, especially if they're having other mental health issues or other just different traumas within their life.
Absolutely. Every time I look down on my screen, I see let's talk about it. So we're having a very frank conversation. And what I want to say is, as you were speaking, my grandmother came up in my mind, both of my grandmothers. And I recall a time grandma done would go in the kitchen and make you some teas. Okay. They, my grandmother high blood pressure. When you was talking about high blood pressure, I see my grandmother with a little white mason jar with a iced potato. Okay, soak it in that water overnight, and you drink that, and that would keep your blood pressure down. Okay, so there's a lot of different things that our ancestors, our elders used. That here we go. Please forgive me, but I'm gonna say it straight how it's coming to me. We're becoming lazy, and we're becoming codependent on a system that don't care about us. When I read the Willie Lynch letter, it says that we was used for economic purposes. Well, it's just changed in this day and time. We're not on auction blocks. We're not sold in the way it was like that. But how else are we being sold? So we have to really look at what we're buying into, because we don't, like you said, we don't want to do the research. We're hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. When we got to open up our eyes today, we have to open up our ears and we have to speak truth to falsehood, right? And we got to take responsibility as a family unit, and in particular, the woman, because she's according to my teacher and the way I've been taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the woman is the first teacher. She's the first doctor. She's the first voice. She's the first everything when it comes to that household and the children and the rearing of the family. She's the cornerstone of that family. So the woman,
Mhm.
75% of the work with us, we got to get back in the kitchen. We got to get back to teaching the woman, get back to home economics, what they took out of the schools. Okay. And we have to stop allowing these TV shows and all of these different things to program us. We have to deprogram to educate ourselves. We got to be reformed and refined, and that's going to get the whole family unit back on track. I'm talking about the repair of the Black family. It's not limited to us, but it starts with us. So,
Absolutely.
yes, we are dependent on a doctor who is going to do his job. And I'm not talking against the doctors here, okay? Because we got to use them for what they're used for. But we don't put our whole, what they say, the old folks say, don't put all your eggs in one basket,
Right.
okay? Get back in that kitchen, you know.
Absolutely. You know, you talk about some things, history with, the backbone of a African American queen and the things that she brings to the table and so on and so forth. But I have to say this is that we run into, and I should say I have ran into, sisters that um don't believe in some of the things that you're talking about. They don't believe that they need to be in the kitchen, and doing some of these more feminine or more women things, I guess, if you will, that you're kind of talking about and you're describing. They want to be a lot more, independent. They want to be a lot more strong. They want to be, a man's equal and things of that nature. So what would you say, to these young ladies that are out here that perhaps don't share, the same vision as you?
Well, I'm going to say this with so much love and compassion for our sisters, in myself, as a woman coming up through the world. When we don't know ourselves, we can't be ourselves, right? So we have to get back into know thyself. And we can't allow Satan to continue to rear us, right? Meaning to give us his formula for what a woman should look like today. We got to go back to basic. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that our our place, our base is our home, but it's not our place. You still can go out and to be this phenomenal woman in the world, but your household is only going to be conditioned to the type of woman that we are grooming ourselves to be. So I would say to a woman like this, what type of family do you want? Right? What type of husband would you like to have? What type of children would you like to bring up in this world? Right? And it's the responsibility of that aspect of the home is it falls on us. So get to know thyself. Go into the nature of the woman. It's our nature to be nurturers.
Right.
It's our nature. See, the enemy, and I'm using this term specifically, is to devalue us in our nature. Kill the male, baby, spare the female. Well, why did he spare us? To make us up into his woman, which means make us up into his mind. When we are come under the divine order, now we become God's woman and not Satan's woman. And I'm not saying that every woman that's out there on the front line is Satan's woman. What I'm saying is it's just going to take a little bit more effort in this 2026 for us to get back in alignment with our nature. It's our nature to cook. It's our nature to nurture. It's our nature to love our husband and groom our children. That's divine. So I would say to a woman, tap more into your divinity, not necessarily your femininity.
Mm, mm. Well, I don't even know what to say after all that, huh? Wait wait a minute. Wait 1 minute here. I think I need to let that sink in for a few minutes, right? But, first of all, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I believe a lot of times, we as men, we may attempt to have, these type of conversations, with the young lady that we might be seeing or and perhaps had kids by or whatever the case may be. And sometimes we as men, we struggle, with being able to deliver, the message, if that makes sense. And then when we struggle in attempting to deliver that message, the message is not received the way that it was meant to be delivered. And then all of a sudden, we have a lot of misunderstanding, as if, we're attempting to tell or force or coerce, the black female into doing things that, again, she may not necessarily know herself or be comfortable with or whatever the case may be. So I know that you were kind of speaking from a female perspective, and again, thank you for that. But I do want to say, for the men out there, pay attention, because this is just not for the women. We need to also tap into, who we are, as kings, of our home, kings of our community. So then therefore we can have the necessary influence and impact on the overall outcome. Again, not only for our families, but also for our communities. And
Absolutely.
and when I say about our communities, I just want to kind of throw some numbers out there just a little bit. When we kind of talk about the black family, home ownership, which is around about 45% in the United States. That is still about 28% lower, than our Caucasian counterparts. You know, um, we need to have that type of stuff in order to build that generational wealth, you know. And there's a lot of different barriers and different factors that kind of come into play on why that gap is the way that it is. And some of that is because we have um the graduation percentage, of our young black kids is like at 81.3%. And these factors are kind of coming from 2022, 2023 census that I was able to kind of pull up, which is about 6% lower, than the national average you know, and you think, feel, or believe that, 6%, doesn't seem to be a lot. Well, when we start talking about our children, our youth, our communities, that 6% impacts us greatly, across the country. Um, the average is like 87.4. We have like 75% of the African American females that are graduating, but we only have 61% of our young black men, that are graduating you know and so when we don't have these high school diplomas, we don't have this education, we don't have the training, we may not have the opportunity to have a double parent home, or at least parents that are kind of co-parenting, in a positive way. All of this and then some, just compounds the issues and concerns that we have, in our communities. And that's when, you have individuals like myself having a child at the age of 15, three by, the age of 21. And that was by three different young ladies at the time. And it was just by the grace of God, that I was able to be strong enough, mentally, to kind of pull it together and be able to acknowledge, the various blessings and things of that nature. But there's a lot of young men, that I have seen over the course of my time that was very similar, to me, but they didn't quite make it. I remember I used to do some speaking, for a for a father's program, and these was a bunch of group of young men. I shouldn't say a bunch, of group of young men, primarily, those of color. And there was a young man there's a bunch of them there that said, "Hey, we really don't mess with the police. We don't like the police, you know, but after a while, they saw that I kept coming every week. What I did do, the change that I did do is I stopped coming in uniform and I started coming in plain clothes, right? And so I had to kind of meet them where they're at. So I had my Timberland boots on too, and my little hoodie. And and so they started to feel a lot more comfortable. And real quick, there's a young man, he was 28, and he said after one of the venues, he said, "Hey, can I talk to you in a room real quick?" You know, as from an officer standpoint, I'm like, "You want to take me in a room, bro? I mean, why can't we talk right here?" You know what I'm saying? But he
Correct.
wanted some privacy, so I said, "Okay, no problem." And I was still a little defensive and kind of standoffish because I didn't know quite what was coming. But all of a sudden, we got in this room, and he just started pouring tears like it was water, and I'm just like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "Bro, you good? What's wrong?" And so he was telling me that he's 28 years old. He had his first child, when he was 14, and now, he did not have any good relationship with the mother, he didn't have a good relationship with the son, and now his son is 14, and, his son is now having a kid. So this guy was getting ready to be a grandfather at the age of 29 years of age, and so he opened up because I had shared my story previously about having a kid when I was 15, et cetera, and, we kept in touch for a long time. Unfortunately, I lost contact with the young man a few years later, and I hope that the young man is still, doing well. But these are the type of things that has an impact, on our outcome, in our communities when, we are man enough or adult enough to lay down with each other and make these children, but yet we cannot come together, long enough, to be able to ensure that they receive the tools in their backpack that they need to receive in order for them to be productive in our communities.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank you for sharing your story. It's so much power in storytelling. And as I was listening to you speak, and I thought about just reflective as you were speaking on some of the things that you were saying and how impactful it is, especially when we are, you know, seeking to get a message out to the people. One of the things that I heard you say is, when men trying to deliver words to the woman, and it may not always land that way. I appreciate, in the Nation of Islam, how we have the women's class, training class for the women. Women train women, men train men. I believe that we need more sacred classrooms, more sacred circles, like you said, how you spoke to this young man, where men are in an environment where steel sharpens steel, and women are in an environment where we connect and it's purposeful. It's not just social, but it's purposeful. It's rearing us to bring the family unit back together, get back into those training classes that's going to help to develop marriages, right? Marriage is not really on the lips of young people anymore, you
Absolutely.
know so we need to have these conversations, but implementations, because when you pulled up the stats about generational wealth, I believe wealth starts in the household. Before we can get graduations, we need to solve the problems of divorce, right? We have
Absolutely.
2.6 divorces. That's what 2.6 divorces, that's per 1,000 people,
Mm.
right? In the Black family, 41% of first marriages ends within 12 years, right? So we have to get back to sacred training. Now, what does that do? That helps us to be more vulnerable, especially when we can speak to people that look like us, been through what we've been through, going through what we going through, and some of us is a little bit further than the other, and we can push each other along and not pull each other back. So going back to sacred training grounds, sacred circles, sacred spaces where the family unit can be a focal point, right? And I believe that's how the generational wealth is going to be implemented, because in the power of storytelling, I grew up in a house where my parents loved me. I really want to say that. We had 5 children. They loved us, but they had us at 17. My dad was 17, my mom was 15. They was hustlers. It was drinking, smoking, card gambling, all of these different things. If we made it to school, it was a blessing,
Right, right.
right? It's not that I wasn't smart, very smart, very smart. But hey, I may have just seen my mom and dad fighting all night. It was too tired to go to school. Or my mom would say, "You're not going to school." So guess what? How many times did I fail in order to even try to make it through high school? And when I graduated, it was like, whoo, I made it. You understand?
Right, right,
So a
right.
lot of our peers and some of the youth of what they're going through, the trouble begins at home, is not at the school. It
Right.
begins at home. So we gotta again shift, I believe, shift the attention back into the homes, where the homes are more focal and more rooted and more grounded in some of the principles of our elders, and bring that in with the modern time so we can be innovative, right?
Absolutely.
Another thing is too, what, and this is where Dianetics come in for me and those who I help. Everything we going through is not on us. The sins of the mothers and fathers shall be visited amongst the children. Well, at a cellular level, there's things that we go through that it don't belong all to us. But we have to know that stuff, DNA, is in your DNA,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Cells hold memory. So if we're reacting to certain things, this is where Dianetics help, because it helps you to understand not just what you're going through, but why you're going through, and how to not just alleviate it, but eradicate it. And that's going to solve a lot of the mental health issues that we have, from depression to anxiety, all of the different things that we experience, that is compound. It's like compound trauma,
Mhm. Right.
right? So yes, that's what I would say as I was listening to you, and how this young man was able to come into a room with you and be vulnerable, not just with a police officer, but with another Black man.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that that we're kind of coming down to an end of another, fantastic, dynamic, energetic show. But there's a couple things that I definitely want to kind of talk about before we get out of here. Number one, we got to have you back. We got to have you back, first of all, because we can kind of go back and forth, and I'm saying keywords and you're saying keywords, and it just kind of keeps feeding this prolific conversation. And again, thank you. But when we talk about the word vulnerable, you know um most of us, is when I say us as Black men, you know in my era, we were not raised or conditioned to be vulnerable. There was no such thing as being vulnerable. If you was to cry or show some type of weakness or softness or something like that there, I remember to this day on how rough and hard, my uncles were on me. You know, and there was just no reason to be, but he was just like, "You're just not gonna be soft, you're not gonna be no punk, you're not gonna be no sissy, blah, 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 blah." And man, did they whoop me and whoop me. And so as I grew up, I was so hard and I was so callous. And even though, and listen, men, even though that I didn't put my hands on a woman, and even though that I didn't talk crazy or call her out of her name or anything like that there, that just basically scratches the surface. And I thought that I was being a man and treating a woman correctly. But there was so much more to that that I had no idea, of what that was and what that looked like and what that meant. And it wasn't until, I got with a young lady, um, and she was able to kind of point this out to me, and I'm just like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. So for years, even into our relationship, we had like a 6-year relationship, but like for the first 4 years, I'm like, you're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, you don't know. And so, but by the time I understood what she was saying, and I was able to kind of go and kind of get some therapy and take some training and things of that nature, the damage had been done.
Mhm.
So I say that to say this, gentlemen, if you need to receive some therapy, if you need to talk to someone, if you need some assistance or help, with these type of things, do not be shy, scared, afraid, and it's okay to be vulnerable. It really is. Um, and some folks may say that you're soft or whatever the case may be because you start to maybe show a little bit of a different side of you that's not usual, but again, you're gonna be just fine. You'll be just fine. Really quick, you're coming here on the 21st of this month,
Mhm.
and then you had stated, why Minnesota, right? So I'm gonna ask you, why Minnesota?
Absolutely. Well, I'm super excited about coming there, and I'm coming to bring something to Minnesota that is not widely known in our culture, in our communities, to address the ills of what we face as a culture with mental health and providing alternative solutions for us to be exactly what we just talked about, vulnerable to make it safe. Heal people, right? Just as they say, hurt people help hurt people. And what I've come to find is not a lot of Black people that look like us that we can feel safe to talk to. 88% mental health workers in Minnesota per our research is of white people, right? Is of a different culture. So we want to bring something to the community where we can empower us to help us.
Okay.
That's why I'm coming to Minnesota. I'm bringing and safe pointing for my community so that we don't fear something that can help us with our minds. I'm coming to set people free. That's why I'm coming to Minnesota.
Right. Right.
I'm coming to set people free so that they can know it's okay for me to heal on purpose.
So can you share a little bit of information as far as where this event's going to be, where you're going to be on the 21st? Is there a fee? How does people sign up, get involved, attend? What do they do?
Absolutely. So it's a free event. It's going to be hosted.
It's free.
It's free, and from what I understand, because this gonna be my first time in Minnesota, I'm coming to Florida. I'm coming from Florida, bringing the sunshine. Okay, one
All
thing
right.
I am gonna bring is some energy to Minnesota. So you want to be in the room with Sister Nayyirah. Okay, I'm coming to 505. I believe this is Wabasha,
Wabasha.
WABA,
Yeah,
Wabasha
Wabasha.
Street North in St. Paul, Minnesota. You can call 763 438-2811. And I'm super, super excited to be there. Again, it's 763-438-2811 and or in 319-541-6318. I'm coming. I'm not coming along. I'm gonna bring my husband
Okay.
and
Okay. Well, we look forward to meeting him too.
yes, I'm bringing my husband, and we're bringing the repair of the Black family, which is worldly, widely known. We're bringing something to Minnesota that has yet to come to Minnesota. And all I can say is just be in the room, and know that something can be done about any and everything that we as a community, as a culture, as a people go through. And I just want to bring something new. And should I say, make it known because it's not really new, but make it known to our community.
Absolutely. So again, that's 505 Wabasha, North, Street North in St. Paul. All right. We're gonna excuse because she's from Florida, y'all. She don't know Minnesota streets like
I don't know
hey, she
Minnesota.
was mispronouncing it and everything, and what she'd have you in Rochester somewhere.
I don't know Minnesota, but Minnesota gonna get to know Sister Nayyirah. Get in the room with me, and we gonna help bring some energy to Minnesota. Okay.
Absolutely, as you done brought energy to the show, sister, and I greatly appreciate it. But again, we have come down to a final episode of Let's Talk About It. We got to have you back on, but before we let you go, we want you to give a word, to our listening and viewing audience.
First and foremost, it's been an absolute pleasure just to sit here, share space with you, share space with your audience. And if I could just leave you with one thing, to whom much is given, much is required. And it's required for us as a community, as a culture, as a people, as humanitarians to make our communities a decent and better place to live. It all starts with you. Nothing change if we don't change. So I say to you, I say to us, I say to the whole Minnesota community, to whom much is given, much is required. And it's required to make our communities a decent and better place to live.
Sister Nayyirah, y'all, Sister Nayyirah.
Yes,
Will be back. She will be
I
back.
will be
Trust
back.
me. She will be back. Again, thank you, sister.
Thank
Uh,
you so very much for having me.
Absolutely. Brother Joe again was unable to attend today. He's out there serving the community. As you know that we are seeking election for Hennepin County Sheriff. So please go on our webpage and check us out and see what we stand for and how we're going to be being able to bring you real transparency, and a true fix to the issues and concerns that are plaguing our communities within Hennepin County. Again, we are here each and every Wednesday at CCX Create, where we bring you news that you can use on topics that plague our communities, our families, on a daily basis. And again, I want to definitely thank Sister Nayyirah, for coming on today, taking time out of her busy schedule, even though that she's on a different time zone and everything else. Uh, um, CCX Create. We can't do it alone. They can't do it alone. Go on to their webpage as well. Click that donation button. Any dimes, quarters, or dollars that you may have lying around. And yes, I know gas prices just went up and things is kind of tough. But if you have any extra change laying around, push that donate button. I sure they will greatly appreciate it. Uh, Um, Again, thank you guys for listening, joining us today. We are down to the end of another fabulous show. Let's talk about it. Joe's not here to end us with that famous backpack, but I'm just going to say I'm Anthijuan Beeks. Joseph Banks not here. Sister Nayyirah, thank you. Peace.
Thank you.